Rick Sepler will be our first speaker, and he is the Planning and Community Development Director for the City of Bellingham. Before coming to Bellingham, he was the Community Services Director for the City of Port Townsend for 8 years. He also served as an affiliate and serves as an affiliate faculty member of the University of Washington's Department of Urban Design and Planning. He has worked in both public and private planning and has background in environmental analysis, site design, community relations, and comprehensive planning, and has received several awards in planning and design work from the American Planning Association. And I'm happy to welcome Rick to Bellingham City Club.
Thank you, Patricia. We're going to talk a little bit about the waterfront today and the shorelines, and that's where the water meets the land. There's a significant passion about that area. That passion is not unique to Bellingham. It's iconic in Washington. It's iconic because our Washingtonians love beaches, they love shorelines, they love the waterfront, they love to be by it, and they identify it as being an intrinsic part of our state. This is where I get you to look at the slides and not at me. Carefully orchestrated. Many of our shorelines face westerly, and that's a great accident of geography because we can watch the sun go down from them. We can walk along them, we can work near them, we can enjoy and appreciate the ecosystems that they have and the contributions they make to the character of our community. You know, shorelines really are character defining. There's an aspect of them that engenders more emotion than any other thing in planning. Well, except for roundabouts. Roundabouts are right up there with shorelines as getting a lot of emotion. And that emotion is evident for the folks who work and need to deal with the issues associated with the shoreline, and those folks who are involved in protecting or designating how shoreline should develop. And I'm going to tell a story about Jefferson County. And many years ago, we had to do an update to the Shoreline Master Program, and we were lacking in some guidance. So we asked for Department of Ecology, who's the stewards of shorelines, to come forward and send us a technical assistant to help us understand some of the issues. And the fellow came and was in front of all of our electeds from the cities and the county and went on and said, you know, I just want to tell you I'm very passionate and emotional about shorelines. It's more than just my job, and I can't even begin to describe the feelings I have for it, but I'd like to show you a picture that describes my feelings towards the shoreline. And he held this up. I think that's Post Point, I'm not sure. And we all sat there, and two of my electeds turned to me and gave that look. Are you sure this is something we need to do? You know, in looking at the shoreline, what we're trying to find is a quest for balance. We're trying to find an ability to take a look at the interests that are diverse and issues that are deep and long-standing and reconcile them in a strip of land along the water. We go right to the heart of a lot of land use and societal and community issues. We deal with the public and private issues, the public and private rights. One of the things that underscores our shoreline approach from government is the public trust doctrine. And the public trust doctrine goes back to English common law to deal with the commons and the ability to do it. It's used in shoreline areas to deal with the ability of the public to have access to the water and to walk in the intertidal areas. And it is profound because a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of states don't accept that as being something that's intrinsic. If you go to Lake Coeur d'Alene, it's quite beautiful, but the private property fences extend out into the water to keep you from walking from property to property. Right? All of the shorelines are privatized. We have a great gift in Washington, that's not the case. Clearly, the shoreline areas are finite resources, and other than in an atoll in the Pacific, there are very few ways of creating more of them. It's undisputed the fragile ecology that's associated with the shoreline. The near shore is the richest environment in terms of the overall ecology and health of a community, the diversity of species and how it works. And you're probably surprised at this. We often find polarized positions about how to handle things. Probably not in Bellingham. That's not been my experience in 2 years yet. The challenge often is the case is that some of our interests are mutually exclusive. And we need to find a way to reach agreement and to address those. In crafting that, the Shoreline Management Act was written in 71 and approved by the voters in 72. It really had 3 basic goals. Let's see if we can reconcile different vectors to serve the state, to serve local communities better. The first is environment. Clearly, we've got to protect a resource that's significant. The second is access. Folks should have the ability to get to the water's edge. That's a right we have as Washingtonians. And it's important to look at the uses that can exist in proximity to this environment, because there are uses that are character defining, that are traditional, that are appropriate, and that we value. You know, I would say if not for the Shoreline Management Act, we probably would have had every inch of shoreline in Washington privatized and developed, and it would look a lot like Lake Coeur d'Alene. You know, I will say that this is something that's a dynamic system. If you follow the politics of Seattle, Lake Union represents a battlefield, and I think they're up to the 5th Battle of Lake Union. The deal was the south shore of Lake Union could go to commercial and some residential setback, and the north shore would stay a working waterfront. Every few years, we have the push where someone comes back and tries to break that compromise and to do residential uses on the north shore shoreline. And to be fair, that's a tough fight, but it's been fought well, and that balance has been preserved. In doing that, the act itself is powerful. It's very unique. The legislature did something that was quite remarkable. In RCW 90-58-900, and there will be a test, so jot that down, they suspended the strict rules of construction so that all of the act is liberally construed. And for the non-attorneys here, what that means is everything from the findings to the preamble has bearing and weight. So much so that there's tremendous power and elegance. I would say, to be fair, most legislation could help an insomniac go to sleep. But I'd encourage you to read the findings the legislature did for the Shoreline Act, because it's a powerful statement of what we value as a community. And I often use this as a model. In doing that, and in suspending the rules of construction, they've established right in the findings a preferential use tree. They start off at the top, number 1. And I won't start at 10 and work my way to 1 so you can guess what it is. I'll start at 1. And that is to recognize the statewide interest over local interest. All of us have a vested interest in the shorelines of the state. No single jurisdiction can circumvent that broader interest itself. Need to preserve the natural character of the shoreline in those areas that are undisturbed, because that, again, is a significant character and functional aspect that we value in Washington. One that I especially value is to look for long-term interests over the short-term benefit of actions. May seem real good, we could do real well right now, but we lose a resource that, again, almost impossible to bring back. To protect the resources and ecology of the shoreline itself. To avoid walling off the shoreline from the public, so the public has the access and can get to it. And to acknowledge that shorelines also have a recreational function, and that we enjoy being on them and walking along them, and we should be allowed to reach the shoreline area itself. In doing so, the SMP, the Shoreline Master Programs, created through the Shoreline Management Act that are unique to each county and city that qualifies, designate various properties. In Bellingham, we look at the land first, as in other communities, and the land speaks. And from those existing use patterns, from the physical characteristics, from the goals and aspirations of the community, we craft the designations that allow for different uses to coexist, sometimes better than our residents do. But I think they are very clear. We allow for natural, urban maritime, urban conservancy, and waterfront districts along various parts of our waterfront. Additionally, we develop a matrix of uses that are allowed. And the highest uses that are allowed in those areas that are designated as appropriate are water-dependent uses. Those are uses that intrinsically have to be by the water. You can't do them somewhere else. Can't do them upland. That are water-related uses, uses that work best in close proximity to the water because of connection, but it's not essential, but they work better there, and we value them. And water enjoyment. Again, that thread of recreational uses that are intrinsic and important, the fact that we have the chance to get to those areas and enjoy the presence of them. So we're going to take a flight and take a little look at our waterfront. We do not have a drone at the city due to budget cuts, but we had a very favorable seagull who agreed to fly the route, strapped with the camera on, and do it. I think the thing that strikes me as we go through is the diversity of uses and the extent of the waterfront. You know, often we think of the waterfront as being those 24 acres downtown, the waterfront district, but there's far more. And much of it has been very thoughtfully designated and preserved to ensure those natural conditions remain. So we're sort of anchored with natural at both ends as we come through the second time. And I should give a call out to the city's GIS department and to Kate Newell and Chris Behe who put this together. Come to the waterfront district, the ongoing redevelopment. You can see the granary building in red. Continuing along south. There'll be no food service on this flight. Back to urban maritime uses, marine uses. Down in Fairhaven, transition to conservancy, which provides for a high level of protection but allows for some uses. And finally, the highest level of protection provided, which is the natural uses themselves. Those are where you preserve what's pristine and important. So we have a suite of different designations, and we have a much broader waterfront that I'd like to make you aware of and to consider. And I think the city, as a relative newcomer, been here for about 2 years, the city has done a real good job, as the community has, in trying to preserve those areas that need preserving and to address those areas that provide opportunities. Like any planning process, there are challenges associated with that. I gave you the Lake Union example before. The issues that come up as pressures build for different uses to be established, to keep that balance, to look at the long-term interest rather than the short-term benefit, to think of the public interest as it factors in and moves forward. There are competing uses. Often we run into an issue where we love our shorelines to death and we overuse areas, and we have to be careful and monitor how that works. And there's a real challenge, too, on the competing uses. We probably could talk about right-to-farm ordinances or airport overlay zones that acknowledge that the more development occurs, the more a constituency develops that can have concerns regarding the future of those uses. Farms in King County disappeared because development occurred around the farms. And the smells and the noises that were probably acceptable 50 years ago weren't acceptable to the new residents who moved in. So we need to be mindful about development patterns and how they affect the waterfront and the shoreline itself. And finally, in terms of natural hazards and climate change, if we build a protective wall of all of the regulations, it won't stop natural systems. We've tried. The thought would be is that we are still at the vagaries of those systems and how they affect it. And climate change and other hazards can adversely affect long-term plans on our waterfront itself. So in closing, I want to talk more about the opportunities than the challenges, because I think the city has been, the community has been a good steward of the waterfront. And I think from where we are, we have to look at how to go forward. It's really important for us to continue to preserve what we value and to ensure that it continues. We need to provide for both economic opportunities and access to maintain vitality in our waterfront areas. And I think most importantly, we also need to leave a lasting legacy. We need to truly embrace that connection of looking at the long-term interest rather than the short-term benefit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick. And I'm a real policy wonk, and so I think that understanding the bigger picture for the waterfront is very powerful, and I appreciate Rick bringing that to our attention. Our next speaker is Jim Kyle. He describes himself as a mostly retired commercial fisherman and charter company owner with a history of leadership in the fishing industry. He earned an MA in geography at the University of Washington. He taught in the public schools for 8 years, and he is a co-founder, and current president of the Working Waterfront Coalition of Whatcom County. There are a number of things on your table that are from the Working Waterfront Coalition, including a few copies at each table of the outline of Jim's talk, and so I'll refer you to those as well as turning it over to Jim.
Thank you, Patricia. It worked. First, I would like to thank the City Club, including Patricia, for giving us this opportunity. Our cause requires public support, and so we see this as a special opportunity and definitely appreciate this chance. We are now 2 years old, and you can see on the screen our logo and mission statement. Our membership includes 112 large and small companies and every type of maritime business. Our mission is to promote the vitality and economic benefits of our working waterfronts for the people of Whatcom County. Our main focus so far has been existing working waterfronts that are on Port of Bellingham property, including the central waterfront from Bellingham Cold Storage to the C Street Marine Trades area, Bellingham Cold Storage, Squalicum Harbor, and along the waterfront to the C Street Marine Trades area. Also not on this map, existing working waterfronts that we have focused on include the Fairhaven and Blaine industrial sites. Since all eyes are on the GP redevelopment site, which is here, of course, the coalition is hoping that the working waterfront will expand into the log pond and shipping terminal areas as called for in the plan. And we place a high value on increasing public access to the shoreline through a mixed-use area around the granary building. Returning to the mission statement, our coalition works to prevent land conversions that replace living wage maritime jobs with low-paying service jobs. These jobs, along with our maritime heritage and recreation, are central to the special relationship with saltwater that Rick mentioned. The anchor you see in our logo symbolizes the public support that is necessary to sustain working waterfronts. Without your support, our maritime sector will drift away. This is happening in harbors all around the country. Here's a close-by example. This picture shows Everett Fisherman's Dock in the 1950s, and it looked much the same when we moved there in 1972. Very close by were welders, mechanics, a shipyard, and a fish house. This web locker building that you see here in the slide was where several generations of mostly Croatian families stored their nets. In 2007, the Port of Everett accepted an offer to build condominiums on this site, on this exact site. There was no one to speak up for Everett's maritime sector. The fishermen were evicted, the building was razed. When the crash ended the development plans, it was too late. And here is a recent picture of this same dock. This is the same dock, exact same place. Post-crash, and post-eviction. The shipyard, fish house, and most of the fishing boats and marine trade shops are gone. Why does this happen? This is really the heart of my message to you today. And we heard this from Rick as well. Everyone likes to be near the shoreline, to live, work, shop, and play. So developers of high-end condominiums, office buildings, and boutique retail can outbid maritime companies for shoreline land. This process is called gentrification. It replaces living wage jobs with service jobs. But I do want to reassure you at this point, this type of cataclysmic gentrification is not going to happen in Whatcom County anytime soon for two reasons. The first reason is that the GP redevelopment site provides a safety valve where mixed-use development can extend Bellingham's downtown to Whatcom Waterway without impinging on our maritime industrial land base. The second reason is that currently our port and city governments place a high value on working waterfronts, and for that we are grateful. But a more subtle gentrification in drips and drabs will remain a force to be reckoned with. And here is a news flash. According to federal statistics, Whatcom County employment in commercial fishing and fish products ranks 6th in the nation. Commercial fishing, the first component in this ranking, is our most visible maritime industry. Given this ranking, why do we hear it said that this is a dying industry? It is true that in the summer, as you see here, the Squalicum Harbor commercial area is sparsely occupied. It is also true that local salmon fishing has declined, so most purse seiners now fish in Alaska. Now this may surprise you, but this graph shows that average annual Alaska salmon catches are now several times larger than during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. But now, even with these large catches, there are fewer boats in our harbors. How do we explain that? The answer is a tale of two boats. Now here's a picture of a smaller, older purse seiner on the left, and a modern, much larger version. There are two lessons in this picture that explain why, although commercial fishing is still viable, we see fewer boats. Lesson 1. This is another smaller, faithfully maintained older wood seiner. Like most currently operating seiners, it is now refrigerated and technologically advanced. This slide shows the hydraulic plumbing system on an updated seiner. Hydraulics have replaced shaft and sprocket drive, leading to faster equipment. Now, I think this is really interesting as a contrast. You see here a seiner probably in the 1940s where there's no assist in bringing the net on board, and the deck crew is pulling it on board, and it takes a while. But fortunately for my back, hand pulling of purse seines, as you see here, ended in 1955, 7 years before my first season as a deckhand. The net was much smaller and lighter then, and could only be set and hauled several times a day, and mostly during slack tides. A primitive power block replaced hand pulling. Now seines are pulled aboard by this advanced hydraulic power block with a non-slip wheel. Often 20 or more sets are made in a single day with no need to wait for slack tides. Here you see a modern power block in action, actually pulling a nice bag of salmon on board after the rest of the net is pulled on board. Both older and newer seiners are now so efficient that fewer are needed, even though Alaska salmon catches are much larger. Revisiting this picture for lesson number 2 on why we see fewer commercial boats. Here is another large modern seiner. These vessels cost over $3 million to build. Most of them do seine for salmon, but they must also work at multiple fisheries during all seasons to support that kind of investment. And so, because all boats are more efficient, and some must work year-round, we see far fewer boats in harbors than we did several decades ago. But commercial fishing is not dead, far from it. And salmon is just part of the story. In addition to seining, trolling, and gill netting for salmon, Bellingham-based boats are involved in many other fisheries. Here you see in this slide Dungeness crab pots and a small crab boat. These lights attract squid to the boat for the California seine fishery. And here is a freezer troller that can fish offshore for long periods without stopping. Local boats are also active in seining for sardines and herring, longlining for dogfish, halibut, and sablefish, trawling for bottom fish, pot fishing for cod and prawns, diving for sea cucumbers, and trolling for tuna, I probably forgot a few, in fisheries that extend from the Mexican border to the Bering Sea. Back to the county's high national ranking. Note the second component is fish products. Bellingham Cold Storage is the largest facility of its kind on the West Coast. And here you see factory trawlers unloading their frozen product, most likely Alaska pollock. Partner companies store and process seafood in BCS facilities. This slide gives you an idea about the massive storage capacity at Bellingham Cold Storage. It totals 145 million pounds. In addition, numerous other companies have some combination of buying, processing, and shipping facilities in the county. In addition to fishing and fish products, the Board of Directors of the Working Waterfront Coalition has seats dedicated to marine retail, charter broker or passenger companies, shipyard or manufacturing companies, and the marine trades. And we have all worked together to establish a positive relationship with the Port of Bellingham. Cooperative projects include coordinating stakeholder input for Blaine Harbor Industrial Area reconstruction and working with port staff on a waterfront leasing policy that should help maritime companies maintain their saltwater foothold. Now, please let these numbers sink in. In cooperation with the Whatcom Commercial Fishermen's Association, the coalition sponsored a study of the economic impact of our county-wide maritime sector. Combined with an earlier port-sponsored study, these are the eye-opening results. Whatcom County has about 6,000 maritime-related jobs, mostly living wage jobs, including about 4,000 direct jobs. These studies show that our maritime sector is not only a valued part of our cultural heritage, it remains a dynamic economic engine. I hope this presentation helps explain how a 21st century Bellingham waterfront could work. With public support, our maritime sector will continue to provide living wage jobs well into the future. In addition, we have the skills and the space to expand into container shipping, bulk shipping, and more marine-related manufacturing. Unlike past expansions, this time, cleanups and good planning will improve nearshore habitat instead of degrading it. Now, thank you. I'll be finished very quickly. Now, make no mistake about it, there is a renaissance underway on our waterfront. Not long ago, there were no maritime stakeholder organizations. Now there are two. Government is on board. Downtown Bellingham is reaching down to the shoreline. And in the Bellingham Sea Feast logo, which you see on the screen, pent-up waterfront energy is bursting out. And remember, the festival starts Friday. That's in just 2 days. As Maurice Sendak once wrote, "Let the wild rumpus begin." Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Our third speaker is Deb Granger. She has been involved with the seafood fishing industry, along with her husband, for over 40 years. She has worked as a high school educator in career counseling, English, reading, and also in public relations, marketing, fundraising, and event management throughout the U.S. She managed a 12-state aquaculture research consortium funded by USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. She most recently helped launch the Working Waterfront Coalition of Whatcom County with Jim Kyle and serves on the board. And I wanted to mention, at your tables are a number of handouts. I'm sorry we just buried you in paper today, but included among them is the insert for the Sea Feast Festival. And I encourage you to take it away with you. There's some additional copies up at the front. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deb Granger.
Thank you. And thank you again to the City Club for hosting this great event, and to Rick and to Jim for their articulate presentations and setting the stage. So I am Deb Granger, and I'm part of the team that is launching this Bellingham Sea Feast, which, as Jim said, begins in 2 days. I've been saying for months, September 30th and October 1st, and that sounded very far away, and all of a sudden, it's 2 days away. So here we go. So our tagline is eat, play, explore, and eat some more. And not only do we have this beautiful waterfront to appreciate and to bless us all, but it also provides us with a healthy and abundant protein source that we all hope to showcase on this weekend. So eat, play, explore, and eat some more. I do want to say that we are grateful to so many for helping launch this festival. Number one, our founding partner is the City of Bellingham, and as you may know, we were part of about 28, 30 groups who applied for a signature festival grant about 1.5 years ago, and our group, together with some commercial fishermen and others, were awarded this grant. And we have every expectation that this festival will be successful and will live on, especially as the waterfront gets redeveloped. So our other sponsors stepped up alongside the Bornstein Seafoods and Hagen Northwest Fresh, as well as Port of Bellingham, significantly, Bellingham Cold Storage, Trident Seafoods, and many, many others. And you'll see a list of all the others on the inside flap of this program guide. And I believe firmly that this is a testament to our gracious and generous community. And there were many more that probably could have supported us, but we ran out of time, so let's see here. And why? Why are we having Bellingham Sea Feast? Basically, it's about time that we showcased and celebrated this precious waterfront we have and our heritage. I was a former social studies teacher, and I always would tell the students we have 3 primary resources in Whatcom County that allowed our European citizens to settle here. And number one is the fertile floodplain from the Nooksack River, and that contributes to our agriculture sector. And we celebrate that big time every year with what's called the Northwest Washington Fair. It's huge. And we celebrate our timber industry with the Deming Log Show. We have not celebrated at all in any meaningful way. We've had little attempts here and there, but nothing significant to celebrate this precious resource we have of our maritime and waterfront, as well as the food that comes from there. So that's what this is about. Don't bother looking at this, but we do have a huge group coming alongside and supporting this. We formed a board, a leadership team, a complete management team, and then we have a few staff, but mostly a ton of volunteers. It's been a huge effort, okay. And who's this for? Basically, it's for all. It's free admission, appeals to all ages, backgrounds, and interests. And go ahead. And where does this happen? Friday, 2 days from now, it is in downtown Bellingham. And that's the effort to intentionally try to connect the city of Bellingham with the waterfront. So Friday, the spotlight's in downtown Bellingham. Saturday, it's at Squalicum Harbor and Sawanich Point Park. Okay, Friday. We're so grateful to be able to bring this group to Bellingham, or to host this event here. Fisher Poets. People say, what do you mean, Fisher Poets? It's a takeoff on cowboy poets, which has been around the nation for over 100 years. Fisher Poets is a takeoff on that, and the city of Astoria launched this about 20 years ago. And I'm telling you, you cannot find a room at the inn 3 months ahead of time. It's 3 nights in 7 venues, and fishermen or people, or maritime people, people who worked in shipping, anybody who's been in on and around the water. Jim said to me at lunch, I said, well, they like to tell stories. He said, there's another word for it. So basically, you hear people who are telling poems, stories, shanties, ballads. Some are poignant, some are you laugh, you cry. It is a great event, and there's 38 of them coming and performing, mainly at the Boundary Bay Brewery and Bistro, but then, click it again. There's also some sea shanties happening at the Honeymoon, just down the alley at the Honeymoon Meat and Cider Bar, and that's gonna be, I have to tell you, some of these can be a bit bawdy and raucous, so just be prepared. But go ahead. You might wonder, well, why am I involved in this? I was a high school educator, but I also have the privilege of, because of my marriage to Pete Granger in the back here, I've been able to reef net. We actually commercial fish off of Lummi Island, and I've done this for about 20 years, and there I am in the tower on the right there. But it is absolutely one of my all-time joys to be able to be out there. So all of you who've had the opportunity to be in and around the water, those memories are seared in you and kind of sustain you. So go ahead. So we're having on Friday also, I invite you, those of you who have a muse in you, to join us at these writers' workshops. On the table, I think I put out about 100 of these. These are at the Fairhaven Library, and these 4 people are hosting these workshops. And honestly, it's a very forgiving group. So you don't need to be an accomplished poet or songwriter. If you have it in your heart that you want to tell a story, or like Jim said, BS a little bit, join in this effort. It's $10, and at this point, just register at the door. So go ahead. I was actually going to quote you a poem, but I won't now. I think we're running out of time. But I learned this poem actually on the beach at Lummi Island from my grandpa, and it's one of my favorite ones. It's called Sea Fever by John Masefield. I must go down to the seas again. So go ahead. Oh, I do have time? Oh, whoa. So, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and the wheels kick and the wind's song and the white sails shaking, and a gray mist on the sea's face and a gray dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying and the flung spray and the blown spume and the seagulls crying. Go ahead. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover and a quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. So the poet is in all of us, but those images, the words capture up what it's like to be on the water. So now we shift to Saturday. Saturday, it's down at Squalicum Harbor and Swanage Point Park, the area where Jim was talking about. And if you open up your program guide to what I call the centerfold, but it's actually the double truck in publication terms, there's a map of all of this. So go ahead. We are hosting the first ever Skill of the Grill, which is the first salmon barbecue grilling championship. And Jay Bornstein's on our team, and his vision is that this be as big as the National Ribs Cook-Off or the chicken cook-off or whatever. And in the room today, we have 2 contestants that have put their hat in the ring, and we have 12 contestants competing for this on Saturday, October 1st. And there'll be prizes, good fun, okay? We also have the Coast Guard cutter tours and helicopter rescue right off of Swanage Point Park where the blessing of the fleet is out there, okay? Oh, and we've had people call me and want to be the ones rescued, so. So here's the map and where it's all happening. And as you can see, parking is a little limited down there, so we encourage you to park along Rotor, walk in. It's a beautiful promenade. The port has done a beautiful job with the grounds down there. You can also park up at BTC and take shuttle buses down. Go ahead. Some of the activities. As we said, oh, it got moved around a little bit, but oh well. I was a format queen when I was teaching high school, but anyway, on the Sawtooth Dock, we have fishermen, commercial fishermen, the boats that Jim was talking about, purse seiner, troller, trawler, gill netter. Most of us have no idea what that is. So those boats will be on display with the fishermen there in their rain gear, telling you how these vessels operate. And we'll also have some AV going, some videos of the different gear groups. And Ad Mosnes is in the room today, and she'll be hosting some of that. We're grateful to her. We have a survival suit race happening. And we are really thrilled to launch a program called Living Legacies of Bellingham's Waterfront. Some people on our team thought, well, we should bring in some of the celebrities from the TV shows, and we thought, no, we have celebrities right in our own community. And so this year, we're thrilled to celebrate 3 of those families. And one of them is in the room today, Shirley Zwanich and her family. I don't know how many thousands of years she was telling that dates back to Croatia, but they've been in this country over 150 or 120 years or so. At least 4 or 5 generations in Whatcom County, but many in Croatia, as well as the Kinley family, and then a gentleman who's worked on the waterfront right out of high school and worked his way up, so he's managing Trident Seafoods. In the commercial fish pavilion, we're having an oyster shuck and slurping contest, and we do have a contestant in the room as well, Michael Lilliquist. He's I know he won, and he thinks he's going to repeat this year, but, oh, and Macaulay, Mike Macaulay, are you here? Where? Ah, okay. Yes, a throwdown here. Okay. And Bobby Briscoe, and then a student in the BTC Fisheries and Aquaculture Sciences program is also going to compete. As they're not shucking, they're slurping, so there's professional shuckers having to slurp. Okay, we have tours. Jim mentioned Bellingham Cold Storage. Currently, there is no way you can get in there because it's a secure facility, but on Saturday, there's 200 people that will be able to go on tours via boat from the harbor. And so you'll have to sign up on site for that, 40 people at a time, 5 tours. We do have 14 food booths happening, and then in the boathouse, we're having cooking demos and information sessions. All of this information is in your guide here. Go ahead. In addition, we have 28 arts and crafts. I think it's up to 32 now. Arts and crafts booths, all kind of nautical, maritime focused. Field of fun, great activities. And then we're having over 20 some booths who represent the nonprofits and the education sector who work really hard to help us learn how to be stewards of our land and our water and the connection between healthy waters and so on. We have a full lineup of entertainment, great bands, and most of them local. We also have a sea shanty workshop, and the Bellingham Circus is performing their aerials and so on. And you can't have a festival without beers, so we've got Brews with a View right on the shores there. Go ahead. So you're all invited. And next one. Oh, one last thing. Saturday night, to kind of cap this off, is the Feast of the Sea. And at that event, on your tables, there's a little half sheet that describes that, and on page 25 in your booklet, it describes that. There is fabulous seafood. I mean, I think there's 10 tables just overflowing with the bounty of our seafood, and that's at the Bellwether Ballroom. The winners of the contest will be announced, and our film, we're making a beautiful film showcasing the journey our seafood takes from its habitat to the harvesting, to the processors, to you. And Living Legacies will be there. The tickets are still available, and they are $90. It sounds like a lot, but for this kind of food that you'll be eating, it's a bargain. Plus good company. Go ahead. There's just a few more. There's how to register for that, and one more, I think. Yes, we are interested in having volunteers. If anybody would like to still volunteer, go ahead. And like I said, I believe this event has the potential of being like a Spoleto or a huge national event, especially as we get the waterfront redeveloped. One more. So come for the fish and stay for the fun, and thank you very much.
So this is a point where we have questions for our guests, and we have a microphone at the left, which is occupied by Stan, and we have a microphone at the right, and Dee has that microphone, and I'm going to just go ahead and let Stan.
A lot of us are excited and hungry for high-tech jobs, information jobs, new economy jobs down on the waterfront, too. There are traditional industries, fish and freight and factories. Can you talk about the relationship and the coexistence? I'm hoping the coexistence of both of those.
I don't feel qualified to say too much, although I know the Port District is taking a lead in recruitment of companies coming into Whatcom County, and of course, high-tech is one of the most desirable possibilities that exist. Beyond that, Debbie, do you have anything else?
Well, you did reference the technological advances in the traditional commercial fishing industry, and there are many positions open in that arena. I think I might have to just wing this, but I believe as we advance and preserve this, there's definitely jobs for people who have those technological skills and companies that would be willing to settle here, definitely for the environment.
Could we get an update on the cleanup, the MODCA funds, which are not available, and what's going on there?
I'm afraid I can't give you much more. It's not something I work on a daily basis, but we certainly can get in touch with you if you'd like to learn more about the status.
I think there are some encouraging, if we had time to get Rob Fix up here, I'm sure he could do a better job, but the Port District and municipal governments are both, here he comes, good.
So the port is the lead on the MODCA cleanups. I don't really have any new information to tell you about, but with the drop in oil prices, if you know what MODCA is, it's a Model Toxics Control Act. It's basically a tax on any hazardous goods that comes into the state of Washington. A majority of that comes from oil. And as the price of oil dropped, the tax revenue dropped, and that's where the shortfalls are coming from. No one anticipated oil to be less than $50 a barrel when this tax was established. So the port and the city are hand in hand in Olympia, fighting for those dollars. We had great success last year. We'll be down there again this year, and we'll hopefully have great success as well this year. Right now, the port has funding sufficient to do probably another $7-8 million of cleanup around Bellingham Bay in the next year or two. And with the city, we hope to secure much more than that to finish the cleanups. But it is a battle, and if you see your legislators, both from the 40th and the 42nd, we would appreciate you bringing up with them how important these Whatcom monies are to our community.
I'm Joanne Rowe, and I would like to point out that it would be a good idea to also emphasize the relationship of Bellingham in the past as well as the present to all of the San Juan Islands, because in the past, the only way to get to the San Juan Islands was from Bellingham. And people like Brian Griffin used to go over there and get seafood and send back with his father to the Bornstein place. And it just has a long history, and a lot of us go over there as second homes. And please include some emphasis of getting there more easily.
I just wanted to say, Joanne, and I forgot to mention this in my lineup, I'll be really quick, but we have a professor at Whatcom Community College, Anna Booker, whose students are showcasing as one of the info sessions in the boathouse a geographic information kind of pictorial interactive map of Bellingham's waterfront since 1850 to the present. And they've got overlays, and eventually it'll be as interactive. You can just click on a kiosk type of thing and find stories and so on. So thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that.
Okay, Stan has a questioner.
My name's Amy Glasser, and I'd like to know your thoughts on, as the trains increase with exports to the Cherry Point area, how will the Bellingham waterfront redevelopment be affected?
I think they're looking at you, Rick.
What a good question. The railroads have rights at this point to use their right-of-way that was assigned, and it's often guided by federal laws beyond our local standards. It preempts us to some degree. Clearly, as a community, we're always concerned about things that pass through and issues that come forward. The shoreline plan's pretty much silent on that issue, in terms of for Bellingham, because it's a transit corridor, and those things typically, when sited or maintained, should changes come up in the future, we might have a chance to address some other alternatives, but right now it's pretty much a status quo issue.
The only thing I can add to that is that at this point, the Cherry Point terminal is on hold, I could say, at the least, and may not be forthcoming. And do we have another question, Dee?
Thank you. As part of the contingent that's kind of past our prime physically, but not quite totally over the hill, I'm excited about the Seafest, but I'm also very interested in accessing the facility. I mean, I could park at the tech school and be bused, but where to? Roeder Avenue is a little bit beyond me. I'm not quite to the handicap parking spot person yet, but I am beyond the parking and walking from Roeder Avenue down to Zwanich Point. Is there access available for people in my particular state of physical circumstances?
Good question. We do have about 20 handicap spots available for you, and if you see me, I'll make a point to find a parking pass for you to get inside. What I mean by inside is Roeder, if you turn at the corner of Roeder and Coho, where LFS is, that from there in will be parking passes only because of all the volunteers and all of the vendors and so on. So I'll get you a parking pass.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Just a quick question for you, because you've talked in your presentation about the interaction of jobs on the waterfront of various kinds and also public access, et cetera. On this November ballot, there will be City of Bellingham Proposition 1 that gives us the opportunity to reauthorize the levy that provides for greenways, et cetera. So my question for you is, what is the interaction between the kinds of jobs that you have and foresee there and the recreational use of the waterfront and public access? Do they, help one another in making the community better?
Well, I'll start with that. Each are component parts of the way the public uses the waterfront, and they're not mutually exclusive. There are untold examples of uses that folks thought were incompatible that actually worked out just fine on the waterfront. Folks like the authenticity of a working waterfront, and they like recreating near it and having access to it. It's visually exciting. There's a lot of things going on, and there's a link to it that can't be created. You can't artificially create it. It just has to happen. Interestingly enough, there's been a lot of work done on saying, how do we invite the public in, but just so far? We want to make sure the public has access to see what's going on, but not get in the way when you're driving trucks or loading or working on boats. And there are a lot of techniques that have been developed over the years that have been very successfully employed. My favorite is Fisherman's Terminal in Seattle, where the areas that the public's welcome on the docks and the nearshore are very well marked and very well paved. And when the paving starts going away, it's as if people pause at the edge of a cliff. They know, I'm not welcome to go over that line, because obviously that's where things happen. So I think they're mutually supportive. I think they build an awareness of the diversity of our economy. I think that people enjoy being close to those areas. And I think that the great compromise that's made in shoreline use is balancing both.
Thank you.
I think this might be the last question.
I think this would probably be from Mr. Suppler. I'm wondering if you could reflect on how the decision to cover over rather than clean up the toxic site that used to be the city landfill down in the waterfront affects the environmental and human future of that area for our future development possibilities.
Well, I was kind of hoping it was going to be our microbreweries water-dependent uses, because I could wax on. Unfortunately, I know in theory about cleanups. I've not participated. I'm a relative newcomer here on the waterfront. There are a number of areas that had alternative uses that have been found through capping or other bioremediation devices to be able to be re-entered and used. There are some limitations that are associated with that. That part I do know in terms of like residential uses. On ground floors and things of that nature. I do think that, done right, it can be extraordinarily successful and bring properties back in for broader public benefit.
Okay, I think that's the end of the question period, and thank you very much. I want to first of all, thank all our speakers for really giving us a broader view and a deeper view of our maritime heritage on the waterfront. Thank you all.